Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day life. Let's start with the video.
My husband, 29M, and I, 27F, have been engaged for over a year. We got married last week and it almost didn't happen because of my petty sister, 34F. I told her that she can't go to the wedding unless she brings a +1. She has been single for 4 to 5 years already, I'm not sure. But she took it as a form of mockery and she got so angry. I just wanted her to have fun. She called me a B over it. Anyway, during the wedding, everything was perfect. My mom was sitting in the front. She was as pretty as she could have ever been. She was sitting with my dad and he wore the most handsome tuxedo ever and everyone was so happy. Everyone was there except for my cousin because she couldn't make it and my sister. I didn't know where she was. Fast forward to me and my husband exchanging vows. My sister arrived. I don't know why, but I've got this gut feeling like I can feel that she did that on purpose. She came so late so she could get all the attention. This was not typically her, but she's been getting on my nerves. I just think she's doing all of this on purpose, but that's not the worst part. She didn't only interrupt the exchanging of our vows, but then she also came with her +1, and the craziest part about all of it is that it wasn't just a friend or someone insignificant. It was my ex-fiancé. She brought my ex-fiancé to my wedding. I've gotten over my ex, of course, but I think it was just so disrespectful for her to bring the ex-fiancé of the bride or the groom to their wedding, right? My sister is my sister. We grew up together. We're blood related and everything. She's been my best friend ever since we were kids, and we love each other. But this one was just over the line. Half of the kids there were more mature than what she did that day. All eyes were on her at that moment, but she acted like it was no biggie and just sat down with my ex-fiancé as her date. I could feel my parents burning with anger behind me. At first, she sat down at the back of the church with the other guests. I decided to just ignore it and just let the wedding continue without making a scene. But then she stood up, grabbed her date's hand, walked down the aisle, and sat closer to me. All eyes were still on her. She was the center of attention at that moment. She knows me too well, she does. When she sat down, she looked at me and smiled. I couldn't stand it. I told the priest to stop for a while and went to my parents and told them to kick my sister out and her date before she could do any more damage. I knew she was boiling up something. I tried my best to hold back the tears in my eyes because this was my sister and I wanted her at my wedding. I wanted to see her in the pictures with me. Although I was really angry and sad, I didn't feel an ounce of guilt at all. I didn't feel bad that I asked my parents to kick her out. I was just boiling with anger, curiosity, and sadness during the time. I tried my best to not let it get the best of me. It was supposed to be the best day of my life, but thanks to my sister, I couldn't even afford to be happy at my wedding. But now that I've given it much thought, am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out of the wedding just like that? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the wedding. I made the original post after 3 days or so. I still have no idea why my sister brought him, so I tried to reach out to her since the wedding but sadly failed. My parents decided to contact her, not just because of the issue, but we were also worried about her. But everything just went to voicemail. Her friends couldn't reach out to her either. This usually happens with her, but she will come around after a few weeks, so for now we're just waiting. As a last resort, I decided to reach out to my ex for the answer as to why she did that and also her whereabouts in case he knew. So for context, I don't like my ex at all. We were engaged for around 3 months when we decided to call the marriage off. He cheated on me with some dumb girl on Tinder. I could write an entire post about that, but that's for another time. You guys were asking as to why I was so angry when I saw my ex when I said that I'd move on. I did, but that man is a walking personification of pain and betrayal. It would simply hurt your eyes looking at him. Plus, I was in shock because we haven't seen each other in years. That's why I've reacted that way. He was also pretty shocked. Anyway, I called him and he said that my sister told him that it was a friend's wedding. It was weird at first that she would ask him to go, but she still went with it. She said everyone she had thought of inviting was pretty busy, and he was the last person on the list. That's why she hit him up. She insisted and even offered to pay him, but he refused the money. I asked him what happened to both of them after the wedding. Did she tell him what her real motive was? He said they just left immediately. She apologized to him multiple times in the car before dropping him off. He kept asking why he was involved, why was he brought to the wedding, why did she lie, but she didn't respond to any of that. She promised that she would clarify it all in the end, but she can't at that moment. She never contacted him again. He also couldn't contact her. He also wanted to contact me about it and her, but I guess we're both on the same page right now. Dumbfounded. What should I do? Update 2. A few days after my last update, my sister finally contacted us. She first contacted my mom about her and everything. She's doing well, thank God. She is fine in terms of our well-being and that she's going to be staying in the country. When I finally got to talk to her, I didn't even ask her who she was. I immediately asked, "What happened? Why did you do that? I don't understand. Did I do something bad to you?" My confusion and curiosity just rushed over me, as they did on the night of the wedding. I prefer it when things come to an end, so when there's an opportunity for closure, I just grab it. Her story is wild, so buckle up. This is what she told me. It was around the third week of January, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before my wedding, I'm not sure. She said that my husband, my then fiance, confessed to her that he had feelings for her and that he didn't want to go on or continue with the wedding. I was speechless when she told me that. She said she was too when my husband told her that. She told him that you're just mistaken. You're not in the right head to say that. You might be tired from all this or stressed, but that's not even funny as a joke, okay? So stop it. You're 2 weeks away from the wedding. You shouldn't have messed this up. Don't miss my sister. She's in love with you and she's probably just as tired as you right now. I just couldn't believe that something like that would happen. I asked her why she didn't tell me back then about this. Why did she have to tell me now? I mean, it's too late. I'm married now. In case this was all true, I would be in a really weird situation right now. She said she didn't tell me back then because my husband kind of threatened her in case this little secret got out. Also, most of the wedding preparations were done and the invitation was already sent out and everything. She didn't want to ruin that. I was also busy and stressed preparing everything and she didn't want to bother me with something petty like that. She was anxious and scared because of that. That's why she kind of isolated herself for a while. She didn't want to see me or my husband, my then fiance. She decided to just ignore it and it sounded like it was just some little nonsense and there's nothing to make a big deal out of. But then 2 days before the wedding, my husband contacted her again and asked her to stop the wedding. She went to the length of ignoring us and didn't think of him or what he said to her a week prior. But then this just confirmed her thoughts that she must do something. That's why she brought my ex-fiance to the wedding without somehow making my husband look bad. I told her that it kind of made me look bad. She apologized and asked what she could do. I told her for now, maybe I have to deal with this alone. She said she's blocked my husband since then, so he wouldn't contact her or talk about that issue. Of course, I was skeptical about all of this. I mean, I love my sister, sure, but she's just really super weird sometimes and it can get annoying. It's just that this is the first time she's gone overboard. So I asked my husband about his side of things and if any of those were true. He said no, none of it was true, and the only fact there was that she did block him. I asked him why she blocked him if none of that was true. He said my sister owed her some cash. It was a few months ago and I kept asking her about it, but I think she got annoyed to the point that she blocked me. It was really rude on his part and I was embarrassed for my sister. What's with all these lies and all this nonsense? To cut it short, we've settled that matter. My sister owed him $10,000. It's crazy. The whole story sounds so unreal, even as I'm typing it. Thank you for sticking through all of this, guys. Not the a-hole. I understand the frustration in your part. You just tried what you had to do to save yourself further embarrassment. It's good that you kicked her out before she could have done anything else. Not the a-hole unless you haven't moved on from your ex-fiancé that the mere sight of him made you so angry. Then you might be the a-hole. But your sister is definitely the a-hole no matter how you look at it. I hope you get to resolve this in the future. Here's the next story. I hate traditional wedding norms. For example, my fiance's M28 parents' custom belief is that the bride's family pays for the wedding. In my 26F heritage, the groom's family pays for the wedding. But my family immigrated to the US and we are not that traditional. My fiance asked his parents if they were helping with the wedding, and it's leaning more towards no, and they reminded him that the bride's family should be paying. They're very well off, and he's their only child. My family is not poor, but they're not rich either. They make enough to get by. My fiance's parents' comment kind of irked me because the whole point of a wedding is a union of the families, so why is one side supposed to pay for the majority of it? My parents, however, are very westernized and don't really care for those dated traditions and have already agreed to help me pay for some of my wedding, which I am beyond grateful for. I was already more than prepared for the fact that I would have to pay for my own wedding, so it makes me happy that they would like to help me even though they don't make that much money. I was under no assumption at all that my fiance's family would even help, but it just irritates me that my fiance's family feels like they have a say in my wedding, guests to invite, me having too many people on my list compared to them, etc., when they are not going to help pay for anything. If they are not going to contribute to the wedding, then I feel like they don't get to have a say in the wedding decisions. I told my fiance this and he says maybe I'm just being dramatic. And that's just how it's always been, and that we should incorporate whatever his parents want. At this point, I don't even want to have a whole ceremony and reception ordeal. Just because something has always been a certain way doesn't mean it's right. Am I the a-hole here or am I just being bridezilla? Edit. Hi everyone, a few things. Sorry for the use of my wedding. I recognize that I should have said our. I think the moment of me typing while being upset got the best of me and I didn't go back and edit like I should have. My fiance and I 100% were already going to pay for the wedding ourselves. My parents recently told me they would help with my contributions towards paying because about 35% of the guest list is my fiance's friends and family, while 65% of the guests were my side of friends and family. Initially, that is how we were going to pay, with him paying 35% and me 65%. I honestly have enough in the bank to pay for the whole thing. I've been saving a lot of money since I got my first job as a teenager. My parents noticed how much larger my side was, so that's when they stepped in to say they wanted to help. And when my fiance asked his parents if they would be helping as well. After reading a lot of advice from everyone, I will be revisiting with my fiance about our finances for the wedding and how we're going to split all the costs. My fiance and I made our guest list together. My family is large, while his is very small. He had no problem with the number of guests I had on my side of the family. It was not a problem until my future mother-in-law saw the guest list. I have only maybe 5 friends on my list and the rest are family. This includes his family and 25 to 30 friends. Other demands, requests, issues that came up are the type of dress I get, food and cake selections, and not using their friend's son as a videographer for the occasion. For people that are so stuck on tradition, they hated the whole something borrowed when I said I was wearing my mom's wedding dress with a few alterations that I would like to add. They tried to tell me how to dress for the wedding. As far as food, we told them our options, accommodations for vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free guests. And they stated they don't want to eat it. It's a chicken, steak, or pasta option. They insisted that we changed it. They also said they didn't like our cake selections either, but we and the people from our bridal party brought to the cake tasting loved the cake. Also, they were upset that we did not go with their friend's son for videography work. We checked out his work and did not like what we saw, so we ended up choosing someone from the bridal show we went to. Not the a-hole, but your fiancé is off. He shouldn't be enabling his parents, especially not at your expense. Literally in this case. Before proceeding with this, I think you and him need to have a serious discussion because what happens in the future when tradition starts coming up around family holidays, children aging parents. This is a glimpse into what it could be like in the future if you don't establish boundaries and reinforce that you are both on the same team. Not the a-hole. Last paragraph is a bit of a flag from your fiancé. I agree if they're not paying towards it, they shouldn't get a say. Alternatively, though, if they were paying for the whole thing, would you let them do entirely what they want? It's your day. If the family wants to help pay, that's very generous, but not on the provision that they can dictate your wedding. This isn't the case with your future in-laws, but the principle stands. I would politely and sincerely say that you can't afford to incorporate their wishes into your wedding, and it's important to you that the people you want are there. Here's the next story. I, 24F, live with one roommate, also 24F, and while we get along and typically live harmoniously, there are some times where I feel like we don't connect. I think this is because we have very different upbringings. I am not one to judge someone based on where they came from, whether it be from money or nothing, because of my own background. My roommate comes from a very stable home life. Both of her parents make six-figure salaries and own multiple homes and travel often. I, however, grew up in a very dysfunctional family, and by the time I was in high school, I was struggling immensely with depression and anxiety attacks due to living with my alcoholic father. When I turned 16, my mother finally took me and my siblings out of the situation, but abruptly gave us to the system. While my younger siblings were moved around to different strangers' houses, I managed to couch surf with different relatives who were willing to have me. It was a very traumatic time in my life and one I've tried to distance myself from. I personally don't want others to judge me for my family situation, so as a rule, I try to do the same for others no matter the circumstance. I did this for my roommate, and for the most part, she's a very nice person, and genuinely, I think she is a good friend, but at times, I think she can be very tone deaf. One night, we were talking about our first job experiences. My roommate started doing volunteer work from a young age and was doing at most 3 volunteer jobs at a time with different local organizations while being in clubs at school. When she asked me, I told her that because I struggled with mental health during high school, I didn't end up getting my first job until I was 18 and graduated from high school. My roommate gave me a look when I said this and told me she also struggled with depression and anxiety when she was in high school and still managed to work. I didn't want to argue, but I did remind her that our situations were a bit different. She said that wasn't true considering her parents are divorced and she also comes from a broken home, like I do. I told her again that wasn't actually a fair comparison because both her parents were remarried since she was young and she has a close relationship with her 2 step-parents, close enough to refer to them as her real parents. And by her own words spoken to me before, she has said how blessed and lucky she feels to have grown up with such a stable family life. I am no longer in contact with my parents whatsoever. I also reminded her that while she was spending her 16th year studying abroad in Italy, I was sleeping on different couches every night. It grew into the sort of argument where my roommate basically told me I need to pull myself up by my bootstraps. And because I become quite upset by this point, I told her she was a hypocrite because her parents still pay her rent. Was I being an a-hole here? For context, my roommate was aware of my situation in high school because I've told her throughout the 2 years we have lived together.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.